We'll start with Matt.
Hey Jeff, I'm curious. At the start of the year, you were rotating pretty evenly between Nedeljkovic and Grice. What did you see in Nedeljkovic that made him kind of start to earn the lion's share of starts?
I just think he probably played better. That was the reality of it. Grice is going to be important to us. I think Grice is, heated up around this time of year lots, and I think he'll be important to us. But I think Ned's, done a little bit better job at times, just in terms of the results. Sometimes it's, the problem is it can get in a bad cycle for the guy who ends up in the number 2 spot a little bit too, because you get all the tough games, you get the back-to-backs, you get the, and so it's hard to kind of earn your way to those other minutes, but it's certainly still a competition. Will remain one the rest of the way. But as I said at the beginning of the year, if one guy kind of separated himself a little bit, then he was going to get the more starts. And I think I thought Ned has separated himself a little bit.
How does he compare to kind of, I guess, the idea of him you had in your head? Obviously, you had seen him a few times last year. I don't know how familiar with him coming up.
I was familiar with him coming up. I certainly talked to enough people about him. I watched him a lot last year, watched him in the playoffs. He's done a really good job. He's done a good job. He's I think I thought last year in a not a huge sample size, a smaller sample size, he did a good job. Obviously a really good job in that sample size, and I think through the course of this season, he's had a number of moments where I think he's looked like a guy who can really be an elite goaltender in this league. And now that's a hard thing to prove. There's very few guys that can do it year in and year out in this league. If you really look across the league, there's a lot of guys that kind of ebb and flow a little bit, and very few are able to maintain that elite level status that I think any of these goalies are shooting for, and certainly Ned's shooting for. So it takes an extraordinary commitment. It takes extraordinary results. The one thing about goaltending, it is a result-oriented position. At the end of the day, there's different ways to do it, but you got to stop it or not stop it. And as I've also said, though, that also falls on the team and making sure that we're playing good defense.
He's had kind of an interesting path. Spent plenty of time in the minors. I think he was on waivers at one point last year. Is that kind of a situation where if you come through that, it probably helps him going forward?
Well, I like anybody that's had to kind of earn it the hard way, because they usually have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder and want to prove they when you're not entitled early, it increases your inner drive for lots of people, and it increases your mental toughness, and those are two huge factors in individual success. And I think somebody like Ned that's had to prove it the hard way, that wasn't given anything, that nobody handed him and said, here's the starting job. Again, you kind of walk around with a chip on your shoulder, but it also means you got to work like crazy, and you got to be mentally tough. And I think those are two things that he is, and that he's going to need to continue to work towards becoming an elite goalie.
Thank you.
Dan Secon.
Hey, Jeff, last night, was that one of the better games as far as creating havoc around the net? First couple of goals, I think, were second chances, and just how important is that just to get those, to create that chaos and get those second chances?
Critical. I think if you want to score on a consistent basis, you have to have chaos around the net. And you have to score what we would term dirty goals. It's just the reality of it. It's very hard on a night-to-night basis to try to set up perfect plays and shoot it in the net every time, especially if the goalie can see the puck. So you want to make sure you create that chaos, make it hard on the goalie. And I thought we did a pretty good job. Is it one of our better ones? I'm not sure. I'd have to look back. I think there's some other games we've been good and some we haven't been good enough. So, but it certainly was closer to the way that we want to be.
Especially on the power play too.
They went in. That's one. And I think that skews everybody's kind of view of how. I think we've had good power plays, we've had chaos, and it hasn't gone in. What I would say to your answer is that's what you need to do. You got to get pucks and you got to score dirty. And whether we did it better last night than other nights, I'm not positive, but we did score on them and we created those opportunities.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yep.
Ted Colfin.
Hey, Jeff, I know you guys obviously have played them before, but just those 1 o'clock weekday afternoon games, is there a little bit of an adjustment to that for you guys?
You know, I actually think lots of guys like him, to be honest with you. You know, I think they can be a little bit different at times. I would tell you, if you know, kind of cuts out the, you know, the nonsense in the morning, the pregame skate and all that, you get right to playing. You know, so you get on a flight and you're home earlier. So I don't know. You know, it's the same for both teams. I know that. I know we got to go out and play great. And I don't think that a 1 o'clock game is a barrier to that at all, and shouldn't really make any difference, to be honest with you. Certainly your routine's a little different, but I think, you know, you play enough different timed games that you gotta learn to adjust your routine. So, you know, we should be plenty prepared for it. You know, like the 5 o'clock games that we played in Anaheim are a little different because it's a kind of tweener. You know, this is pretty cut and dry. You get up, you eat what you're eating, and you go, you play the hockey game.
If it was on the schedule, you'd play it, obviously, but is it a little bit fortunate now that maybe that Philadelphia game Tuesday night got rescheduled? Because that would have really been a capper to a real difficult stretch here.
Yeah, if you look at the 2 weeks in total, it would have made it difficult. If you just look at the back-to-back, I don't think that's a hard back-to-back because you're playing in the afternoon, you know, and I think the hardest thing about back-to-backs is getting in late and where you're sleep deprived. To me, that's the number one thing that makes it the hardest. So, but you're right. You know, it would have been a long stretch of games.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah.
Ragnar?
Hi, Jeff. You being a former goalie yourself, I've been wanting to ask you this for a while. How much of an asset is it to have a goalie like Alex who is so adept at playing the puck?
I'm just trying to decide what to say here. We'll keep it professional. So what I would say, Art, is yeah, like I've been lucky at different times in my career to have goalies that could really play the puck. You know, I won a junior championship with Brett Bennett, who was like an automatic breakout for us for the Indiana Ice. And it makes a world of difference because it's hard to forecheck. We've been one of the better teams in the league at our goalie touch breakout success, and I think, you know, one of the big reasons is Ned's ability to play it, and you know, that can come with its pitfalls at times, and you got to be open with that too. And you know, you obviously don't want to give up a lot of types of goals where goalie's back there playing the puck, but I think if you look at the pluses and minuses and you realize how hard it is to forecheck if the goalie's touching the puck and does a really good job with it. You know, sometimes we get frustrated as coaches because the other goalie touches the puck a bunch, but it still results in our puck on the forecheck. That's not as big a deal. It's when it becomes almost an automatic breakout that it can be a big deal. So certainly it's a real positive.
Was there an adjustment period, or are the skaters still kind of adjusting to how aggressive he is back there?
I would just say that we had to probably practice it more. Like, I think we went through the early part of the season, and you know, you got to really decide what's going to be most important for you to practice. And I think not that it's not important to us, but it slipped away a little bit early. And I think we really made a concerted effort. Doug Huda was really on me to make a concerted effort to make sure we do lots of goalie touch breakout stuff, and I think it's helped us be better because it's just, you know, the commands and the calls and sprinting back for pucks and making sure you're available. You know, one of the areas that he can hit is that center in the middle of the ice, and you know, but you got to make sure the center's ready for it. And it cost us a goal a few nights ago. You know, where the center wasn't totally ready for it. It might not have been the right exact play, but that can be a real positive if you know, they go to the goalie and go to both D, then you just hit the center. But that's definitely something that you have to practice.
Did you play the puck much, you know, back at Ferris State, or did Bob Daniels try to reel you in?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Art. So I'll give you a story. So we were going, my sophomore year, I was the starting goalie at Ferris, and we were going to Michigan. And at that time, you know, Marty Turco was the goalie my years that I was at Ferris. He was at Michigan. So he obviously played it a ton. And at that time, I could play it not bad. I think I played it pretty good, you know. And so we worked hard going into Michigan to play on this breakout where I went back, and you know, it's what everybody kind of does now, but Bob Daniels would have been a little ahead of his time, and so we were really working on this, and both D were reporting the corners, and I was going to give it to either side, and we were going to get out of our zone all night. And I didn't last more than 6 minutes in that game before I was pulled. So it was out the window. So that's my goalie touch story.
All right, well, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Last question, Daniela Bruce.
I always hate following up. Art,
Yeah, it's a
because
hard one to
Yeah,
follow.
and you guys
yeah,
all
for
laugh
sure.
and
Yeah.
smile every time Art
Yeah.
asks a question.
Let's get back to
so-
serious.
Yeah, I just have one quick question for you. Last night, you talked about how important it is to repeat the success
Mhm.
in Monday's game, and you have some experience with the schedule you played last year, but does it make it harder to do that against the same opponent?
That's an interesting question. I always felt in college, it was really hard to sweep a team. A lot of times you play back to back in college, and I always felt it was really hard to sweep a team because you're usually going to get their best the next night. And and is that true in the NHL? Probably. It probably makes it a little bit harder potentially. But in the end, it still comes down to playing a great game. And I think if we play a great game, we put ourselves in a great position. So is it harder? Maybe a little bit. And I know we'll get their best for sure. But we got to go out and play a great game. Yep.
All right, those are all the questions